It all started with a broken camera. One moment, I was setting up my gear, excited to film the project I'd been dreaming about for weeks. The next, my boyfriend, someone I thought loved me, smashed it against the wall like it meant nothing. I just stood there, frozen. The lens shattered, but so did something inside me. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just walked out. And when I did, I ended up at the doorstep of the one person he hated the most, his rival. I didn't know what would happen next, but deep down, I knew my life was about to change forever. The morning started like any other. I was humming to myself, pouring coffee, and checking the battery on my camera. It was finally the day I'd planned to shoot the video I'd been thinking about for weeks. My small channel had started gaining attention, and this one felt like it could be something special. My boyfriend, Aaron, was still in bed, his arm hanging off the side like he didn't have a care in the world. I smiled to myself, thinking how lucky I was to have someone who supported me, or at least, I thought he did. When he finally got up, his energy was off. He walked around the apartment like he was looking for a reason to be angry. I asked if something was wrong, but he brushed me off with a short, nothing. I shrugged it off and went back to checking my setup, placing the tripod in just the right spot, testing the lighting. I could feel him watching me, though. Not the warm kind of watching, something colder. "You care more about that stupid camera than you do about me," he suddenly said, his voice flat but sharp. I turned around, confused. "What? No, I don't. I've just been planning this shoot." He cut me off. "Planning it for days. Ignoring me. Talking about your dreams, like I'm just in the background." That hit me. I wasn't ignoring him, was I? I tried to explain, to reassure him that I wasn't pushing him away. That he was important to me. But his expression didn't change. It was like he'd already decided who I was in his mind. I took a step toward him, hoping to soften whatever was brewing inside him. Instead, he stepped back, looked at the camera, and in one quick, horrifying motion, grabbed it off the tripod and slammed it onto the floor. The sound of it crashing echoed in the room. I didn't move at first. I couldn't. My heart dropped to my stomach. Pieces of plastic and glass scattered across the floor like tiny shards of my own confidence. I blinked, hoping it wasn't real. But it was. My camera was gone. My project was gone. He had destroyed it without a second thought. I looked at him, expecting regret, maybe even shock at what he'd just done. But there was nothing, just that same flat expression. No apology, no remorse. "You'll get over it," he said, turning away like it hadn't just happened. I knelt down, staring at the broken lens, my fingers shaking as I touched it. This wasn't just about the camera. It was about everything I had pushed aside to keep this relationship together. The compromises, the quiet moments when I bit my tongue, the times I told myself his temper wasn't that bad. My throat tightened. I didn't want to cry in front of him. I didn't want to give him that. Without a word, I stood up, grabbed my phone and charger, slipped on a hoodie, and walked to the door. My hands were cold, my breath shallow. He didn't stop me, not even a question, just silence as I stepped out. The hallway outside felt like freedom and fear all at once. I had no idea where I was going. But I knew I couldn't stay there. Not another minute. The cold air hit my face the moment I stepped outside. I didn't have a plan, just this heavy feeling in my chest that I had to keep walking. My fingers wrapped tightly around my phone, though I wasn't sure who I was going to call. My mind was spinning, trying to piece together how it got this bad. Just yesterday, Aaron had kissed my forehead and asked what I wanted for dinner. Today, he smashed the one thing that mattered to me without a second thought. I found a small bench near the park and sat down, feeling the weight of everything hit me all at once. The silence felt strange, like the world had stopped to watch me sit in this mess. People walked by, headphones in, laughing, living. I wanted to disappear. I wanted to scream. I wanted someone to tell me it was going to be okay, even if it wasn't. I stared at my phone screen, fingers hovering over names. I didn't want to explain what happened, but I also didn't want to be alone. I scrolled through my contacts until I saw Layla's name, My best friend since college. She knew about Aaron. She'd warned me, gently, but I hadn't listened. I pressed call before I could change my mind. She picked up on the second ring. Hey, what's up? My voice cracked. He broke it, Layla. My camera. There was a pause. What? Are you okay? No, I whispered, swallowing hard. I left. I just walked out. She didn't hesitate. Where are you? I told her. She told me to stay put, and she'd call me right back. A few minutes later, my phone lit up again. This time, her voice was calmer, more certain. Listen, I called someone. Don't freak out, okay? It's Tyler. I froze. Tyler. Aaron's old rival. The guy he couldn't stand. Their history was messy. Something about a girl they both dated before me. Creative jealousy. Too many egos in the same room. I didn't know the full story, but I knew Aaron hated the sound of his name. I know it's weird, she said quickly, but he's close by, and he said you could crash at his place if you need to. I hesitated, heart racing. Layla, I don't know. I wouldn't suggest it if I didn't trust him. He's not like Aaron. He's calm, safe, and you need somewhere to go. I looked around at the dimming sky, the chill biting at my skin. I couldn't go back, and there was nowhere else. Okay, I said quietly. She gave me the address, and I stood up, legs a little shaky. The walk felt longer than it was. Every step felt like I was moving farther from who I'd been yesterday. I didn't know what Tyler would say. I didn't even know if this was a good idea. But I had to trust something, even if it wasn't familiar. When I reached his door, I hesitated. My finger hovered over the bell. Then, before I could knock, it opened. He stood there, surprised, but not unkind. His eyes searched my face, and something shifted in his expression, like he understood more than I'd said. Hey, he said softly. You okay? I shook my head, and without saying a word, he stepped aside and let me in. The warmth of the apartment wrapped around me like a blanket I didn't know I needed. It was quiet inside, peaceful in a way that made me want to collapse right there on the floor. I stepped in slowly, my body still tense from everything that had happened, like I hadn't really left that other place. Tyler closed the door gently behind me. He didn't say anything for a moment. Just let me stand there, letting it all settle. You want something to drink? He asked after a pause, his voice low and careful, like he was afraid too much noise might break me. I nodded, unsure of what I even wanted. He disappeared into the kitchen, and I took the chance to look around. His place was different than I expected. It wasn't flashy or overly neat, but it felt lived in. Comfortable, safe. There were plants in the corner, a stack of old books by the window, and the faint scent of vanilla in the air. I stood still, not trusting myself to move. Tyler came back with a mug and handed it to me. It's just tea, he said. Didn't know what you'd want. I took it in both hands, holding it like it might ground me. The warmth soaked into my skin, and I nodded. Thanks. We sat in silence for a while. I didn't know where to start, and he didn't push. It was strange, being here. With him, the one person Aaron always warned me about, always painted as manipulative or jealous or fake. But none of that matched what I was seeing now. Tyler just looked calm. Like someone who'd seen chaos and decided not to live in it. Eventually, I spoke. He broke my camera. He nodded slowly. Layla told me. I'm sorry. It wasn't just the camera, I said, my throat tightening. It was everything. The way he looked at me when he did it. Like I didn't matter. Tyler leaned forward, elbows on his knees. You do matter. The words hit me harder than I expected. I didn't realize how badly I needed to hear them until they were said out loud. I stared at the tea in my hands, afraid that if I looked up, I'd lose it. I don't know why I'm even here, I said quietly. You and him, you never got along. He gave a small, dry laugh. That's putting it lightly. I looked up. Why did you say yes? Why let me in? He met my eyes. Because you're not him, and I've seen how he treats people. You didn't deserve that. No one does. My eyes stung, but I blinked the tears back. I wasn't ready to cry. Not here. Not yet. Tyler stood up and motioned toward the couch. You can crash here. Blankets are in the basket. You don't have to talk anymore if you don't want to. I followed him wordlessly, pulling a soft blanket over my legs once I settled in. He turned off most of the lights, just leaving one warm lamp in the corner. Bathrooms down the hall, he said. Door on the left. I nodded again, too tired to say more. My body felt heavy, my head foggy from everything. Tyler disappeared into his room, and I was left alone on the couch, staring at the ceiling. Everything that had happened kept replaying in my head. The crash of the camera, the look in Aaron's eyes, the silence after I walked out. And now, this silence, different but just as loud. I closed my eyes, holding the blanket tighter, and tried to let the quiet wrap around me. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe. Even if just a little. The scent of fresh coffee drifted through the room before I even opened my eyes. I blinked slowly, disoriented at first, then remembered where I was. Tyler's couch. The blanket still tucked around me. It was quiet except for the gentle hum of the coffee maker and the occasional creak of the floor as someone moved in the kitchen. The soft glow of morning filtered through the windows, painting everything in a pale gold. I sat up slowly, brushing my hair back and hugging the blanket around my shoulders. My body felt stiff from sleeping on the couch, but my chest wasn't as heavy as it had been the night before. I didn't know if I was okay, but I didn't feel like I was drowning anymore. Tyler appeared a moment later with 2 mugs in hand. He held one out to me without a word. I took it with a grateful nod. The warmth was comforting. I took a slow sip, letting the bitterness ground me. You sleep okay? He asked, sitting across from me on the armchair. I gave a small shrug. I guess. Better than I thought I would. He nodded, taking a sip of his own coffee. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It felt natural, like we both understood that words didn't need to fill every space. After a while, I found my voice again. Did Aaron ever talk about me to you? I mean, before all this. Tyler let out a short breath, rubbing the back of his neck. Not in ways that were fair to you, no. He liked control, liked being the center. If someone outshined him, even accidentally, it got under his skin. I stared into my mug. I used to think he was just passionate. Intense. I thought it meant he cared. Caring doesn't look like that, Tyler said gently. Caring isn't breaking your things when he's upset. It's not making you feel like your dreams are a threat. I nodded slowly, the truth of his words sinking in deeper than I wanted to admit. We sat there for a while longer, sipping coffee in quiet. Then, Tyler broke the silence. You still planning to make that video? He asked. I looked at him, surprised. I don't even have a camera anymore. You're a storyteller. Tools change. That part doesn't. His words caught me off guard. I hadn't thought of myself like that. Not since everything fell apart. Maybe not ever. I just liked creating. I liked sharing something real. He stood up and walked into the hallway, disappearing for a moment. When he returned, he held a small black camera in his hands. It's not fancy, just something I use for side projects. But it works. I stared at it, unsure of what to say. He walked over and set it on the table in front of me. I'm not giving it to you, he added with a smirk. Just lending it, until you're back on your feet. Something tightened in my chest, not sadness, not guilt, but something softer. Gratefulness. I reached out and touched the camera lightly, as if afraid it would disappear if I held it too tight. Thank you, I said quietly. He nodded. You deserve to keep creating. Don't let anyone take that from you. That afternoon passed quietly. I stayed on the couch, flipping through my notebook, jotting down new ideas. Tyler moved around the apartment, working on something in the other room, giving me space but always within earshot. At one point, he returned with a plate of toast and fruit. You haven't eaten, he said, setting it down in front of me. I smiled for the first time in what felt like days. You're really not how he described you. I'd hope not, he said with a shrug. I never hated him, you know. I just didn't like what he did to people. I looked up at him. Why did you stop being friends? He hesitated. There was a girl. Years ago. He liked her. She liked me. He couldn't handle that. Blamed me. After that, everything changed. Did you ever want to fix it? I asked. Tyler shook his head. Some things aren't worth fixing. Some people aren't willing to change. His words sat with me long after he went back to his room. I thought about all the moments I had looked the other way, all the times I told myself Aaron would grow out of it. Maybe some part of me knew the truth. I just hadn't wanted to admit it. That night, I laid on the couch again, camera beside me, heart a little lighter. I didn't know where this road was leading. But for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid to follow it. I woke up to soft rain tapping against the window, the kind that makes everything feel slower and heavier. I didn't move right away. I just lay there under the blanket, watching the drops slide down the glass. It felt like the world was giving me space to breathe, space to feel without rushing me. My body ached, not just from the couch, but from everything I had been holding in for too long. My chest felt tight, like a knot that had been tied too many times. I knew it wasn't just about Aaron smashing the camera. It was about all the times he made me feel small, all the little ways I lost pieces of myself trying to keep him calm, to keep him happy. The sound of the door creaking open pulled me from my thoughts. Tyler poked his head in. "You awake?" I nodded. He walked in holding a bowl of oatmeal, steam still rising from it. "Thought you might need something warm." "Thanks," I said, taking it carefully. He sat on the chair nearby, sipping his coffee. I could feel him watching me, not in a way that made me uncomfortable, but like he was trying to understand where my head was at. After a few bites, I finally spoke. "I don't even recognize myself anymore." He leaned forward, setting his mug down. "What do you mean?" I used to be excited. About everything. Filming, editing, even just brainstorming. I'd wake up with ideas and couldn't wait to start. And now, I don't know. I feel like a shadow of who I was. He didn't respond right away. He let the words sit, giving them weight. Then he said, "He drained you. It happens when you're always giving, always trying to keep someone from exploding. You stop doing what you love because you're afraid it'll set them off." I stared down at the oatmeal. My hands had stopped moving. I kept thinking if I was more patient, more understanding, he'd stop. Tyler nodded slowly. "I've seen people go through that. They start blaming themselves. But it's not your fault. You were trying to love someone who didn't know how to love you back." That broke something inside me. My throat tightened, and this time I couldn't stop the tears. They came slowly at first, then all at once, hot and quiet. I didn't sob, didn't make a sound, I just sat there, tears falling into the bowl one could no longer eat from. Tyler didn't rush over or panic. He just handed me a tissue and sat there with me. That silence meant more than any words could have. I wiped my face slowly, ashamed of crying in front of someone I barely knew. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "Don't be," he said gently. "You're allowed to hurt." I set the bowl aside and leaned back, the blanket still wrapped around me. The storm outside had picked up, the tapping now a steady rhythm. I closed my eyes and let myself breathe. We didn't talk for a while after that. I think he knew I needed space to sit with it all. Later, when the rain started to ease, I asked him something I hadn't expected to say out loud. "Do you think I'll ever feel like myself again?" He looked at me, his voice low but steady. "Yeah, not all at once, but piece by piece, you will." It was the first time I believed it might be true. The rest of the day passed quietly. I wrote in my notebook again, the words coming more freely now. Tyler worked nearby, giving me space but never really leaving. There was something comforting about that. By evening, I had filled 3 pages with story ideas, feelings, memories I hadn't let myself acknowledge until now. My hand ached from writing, but it was a good ache, a reminder that I was still here, still capable. That night, I fell asleep with the notebook beside me, the camera resting on the table, and a faint sense that something inside me was starting to heal. I wasn't fixed. I wasn't whole, but I wasn't invisible anymore. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough for now. The next morning came quietly, without the weight of anxiety pressing on my chest like it usually did. I sat up slowly, rubbed my eyes, and looked around the room. Tyler was already awake, seated at the table with his laptop open, headphones in. The light from the screen lit up his face, focused and calm. I stretched and stood up, suddenly realizing how long it had been since I went outside just for myself, not to escape, not to run, but just to breathe. Something in me wanted to move, to walk, to feel the world around me again. "Hey," I said softly. Tyler looked up and pulled out his earbuds. "Hey, sleep okay?" I nodded. "Better than I expected. Do you feel like going for a walk?" He smiled a little. "Yeah, I could use one too." We stepped out into the cool morning air. The rain had washed the streets clean, and everything smelled fresh, like the world had been reset overnight. We walked in silence at first, side by side, not needing to fill the space with words. Just the soft sound of our steps on the wet pavement and the occasional chirp of birds filled the quiet. After a few blocks, I spoke up. "It's strange how quickly things can change. One day you think you're safe, and the next, everything breaks." Tyler glanced over. "Sometimes, when things break, it's the only way to see what's really going on underneath." I thought about that, about how I had ignored all the signs, about how I had dimmed myself to make someone else shine. I had convinced myself it was love when it was really control disguised as care. I used to tell myself he didn't mean it, I said. That it was just stress, or he was passionate, or tired. He nodded. "I've heard that before. I've told myself that before too." I looked at him. "Someone did that to you?" He shrugged. "Not like Aaron, but yeah, someone once made me believe I was only worthy when I was useful. When I was bending to fit into their world." We walked a little more before he continued. "It took me a long time to realize I didn't have to shrink to be loved." His words settled deep inside me. They weren't loud or dramatic. Just quiet truths I hadn't had the courage to say to myself. We ended up at a small park, sitting on a bench under a tree. I leaned back, watching the sky through the leaves. "I want to get back to who I was," I said softly. "But I also think, maybe I can become someone better. Stronger." Tyler smiled. "You already are. You walked away. You chose yourself. That's more than a lot of people ever do." I looked at him, really looked. There was no judgment in his eyes. Just understanding, support, something I hadn't realized I'd been missing for so long. "Thank you," I said. "For letting me stay, for not asking for anything in return." He shook his head. "You don't owe me thanks. You owe yourself kindness." The walk back felt lighter. The tension in my shoulders had eased, my steps more certain. When we got back to the apartment, I went straight to the notebook. I had something I needed to write. Not a video script, not a story, just a letter, to myself. I wrote about how I'd stayed too long. How I'd let someone chip away at me until I didn't recognize who I was. And then, I wrote about walking away. About the morning sunlight on my face. About the kindness of an unexpected ally, about hope. Later, I showed Tyler. He didn't say much, just read it, nodded, and handed it back with a soft, "That's real. That's powerful." That night, I didn't cry. I didn't lie awake going over everything I'd done wrong. I curled up under the blanket and let the silence hold me. And for the first time in a long time, I felt proud of myself. Not for being perfect, but for finally choosing peace. The sun was already high when I woke up. I'd slept deeper than I had in weeks, and, for once, I didn't wake up with a pit in my stomach. I sat up slowly, rubbing my eyes and stretching. The apartment was quiet, but not in the uncomfortable way I used to dread. It felt calm, peaceful. I wandered into the kitchen and found a note from Tyler on the counter, went out to grab some groceries. "Be back soon. You're doing great." A smile tugged at the corner of my lips. It was simple, but it meant more than he probably realized. I poured myself some water and sat at the table, staring at the small black camera he'd lent me. My hands hesitated as I picked it up. I hadn't touched a camera since Aaron smashed mine. Part of me still felt a tightness in my chest when I held it, a fear that if I allowed myself to get excited again, it would be taken away. But another part of me, a growing voice deep inside, was tired of being afraid. I set up the camera, Slowly, carefully. Each movement deliberate. I adjusted the tripod, found the light, and took a deep breath. Then I pressed record. I didn't prepare a script. I didn't overthink it. I just started talking. I spoke softly at first, unsure. I talked about my love for filming, how it had always given me a sense of purpose. I talked about losing that love when someone I trusted decided it wasn't important enough. I didn't name him. I didn't need to. I talked about how I'd started finding pieces of myself again. About late-night talks with someone who listened, walks that cleared my mind, and moments of silence that didn't feel heavy anymore. As I spoke, something inside me loosened. I wasn't just telling my story. I was reclaiming it. When I finished, I sat back, staring at the blinking red light on the camera. My hands trembled a little, but not from fear. From relief. Tyler walked in just as I was packing up the gear. He set the groceries down and raised an eyebrow. "You filmed something?" I nodded. "Yeah, I think it might be the most honest thing I've ever said out loud." He smiled. "Good. That's the kind of story people need to hear." We spent the rest of the afternoon editing together. I wasn't used to working with someone like this, but Tyler didn't take over. He gave suggestions, asked questions, and let me lead. It felt good to create without the pressure of judgment hanging over me. As we went through the footage, I saw myself differently. Not as someone broken or lost, but someone who had survived. Someone who was still here. Still trying. We finished the edit just as the sun started to set. The golden light filled the room, casting soft shadows across the floor. I saved the file and leaned back, exhausted but satisfied. "I think I'm going to post it tomorrow," I said. Tyler nodded. "Whenever you're ready." I glanced at him. "You know, I'm not sure what happens next. With Aaron. With any of it. You don't have to know," he said. "You just have to keep choosing what feels right for you." That night, I sat by the window and wrote again. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I wrote about healing, about how it never looks like you expect it to. I wrote about how sometimes, the people we fear the most are the ones who push us toward the people who show us who we really are. When I finally crawled into bed, I felt something I hadn't in a long time, hope. It didn't roar. It didn't demand attention. It just settled quietly in my chest, steady and soft. And this time, I let it stay. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because of worry, or stress, or anything heavy. It was something else. Something lighter. Like anticipation. I lay in bed, eyes open, watching the shadows shift on the ceiling. My heart wasn't racing. It was steady, calm. I kept thinking about the video I had filmed, the one that held every raw part of me I had tried so hard to hide. Morning came gently, spilling golden light across the apartment floor. I sat up, stretched, and looked at the camera on the desk. The file was still saved, untouched since we finished editing. Tyler was still asleep in the other room, so I took those early moments to be alone with myself. I pulled my laptop over, opened my channel, and hovered over the upload button for a few seconds longer than I meant to. Then I clicked it. The progress bar moved slowly, but I didn't look away. Every percent that ticked forward felt like I was reclaiming something that had been taken. Not just the camera, not just my voice. My sense of self, of worth. When the upload completed, I added a short title, nothing dramatic. Just honest. Then I hit publish. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the screen. A wave of nerves came over me, but it didn't stay long. I wasn't looking for validation. I just wanted to be heard. Later that morning, I packed my bag. I had to go back to Aaron's. Not to stay, not to explain. Just to collect the last of my things and say the things I hadn't been able to before. Tyler offered to come with me, but I said no. I needed to do it alone. The walk there felt like crossing through an old version of myself. Every step reminded me of nights I had walked home scared, mornings I had forced smiles. When I reached the door, I took a deep breath and knocked. Aaron opened the door with a surprised look. He didn't say anything at first, just stepped aside to let me in. I walked in quietly, heading straight to the bedroom to grab my few remaining things, books, a pair of shoes, a scarf I thought I'd lost. When I turned to leave, he was standing in the hallway, arms crossed. "You're really not coming back?" I looked at him. "No, I'm not." "You're overreacting," he said, his voice cold, defensive. "It was just a camera." "It wasn't just the camera," I replied. "It was everything leading up to that moment. All the times you made me feel like I was too much, or not enough, or in your way." He didn't respond, just stared at me, eyes unreadable. "I'm not here to argue," I continued. "I just wanted to say this. I'm not the person I was when I met you. And I'm not going to keep shrinking just to make you feel big." His expression cracked for a second, like he didn't know whether to be angry or surprised. I didn't wait for a response. I walked past him, opened the door, and stepped out into the sunlight. When I got back to Tyler's place, I felt lighter. Like I'd just set something down that I'd been carrying for way too long. He looked up from the kitchen when I walked in. "How'd it go?" I said what I needed to say, I replied. He nodded. "Good." I checked my phone and saw that the video had already started getting views. The comments were small at first, people saying they'd been through something similar, people thanking me for sharing, others just sending love. I read them all. Every word felt like a thread stitching me back together. That evening, Tyler and I sat on the balcony with mugs of tea, watching the sun dip behind the buildings. The air was cool, but not cold. I pulled the blanket tighter around me and smiled. "You ever think about how people we barely expect end up changing our lives?" I asked. "All the time," he said. I nodded slowly. "You did that for me." He looked at me, serious but soft. "You saved yourself. I was just here to remind you that you could." I looked out at the fading sky and felt a calm I hadn't known in a long time. I didn't know what would come next, but I wasn't afraid of it anymore. I had stories to tell, and I was ready to tell them. And for the first time, I truly believed my story mattered. Thank you for being here and listening to my story. If you've ever felt lost in a relationship, if you've ever questioned your worth because someone made you feel small, you're not alone. Healing doesn't happen all at once. It comes in quiet moments, in small decisions, in choosing yourself again and again. If this story spoke to you, even a little, I hope you know that your voice matters too. You don't need permission to leave what hurts. You don't need to stay to prove your love. You are enough, exactly as you are. If you'd like to hear more real, honest stories about growth, healing, and finding your voice, consider subscribing. Leave a comment and share your thoughts. Your words might help someone else feel seen too. Until next time, take care of yourself. You deserve peace. You deserve kindness. You deserve to be free.